I never thought my loyalty to a politician would carry me to the edge of eternity. I had been speaking fiercely in defense of Tulsi Gabbard, convinced she was standing for truth, that she was different from the corrupt machine. My heart was pounding with passion, maybe too much, and as I argued, as I defended, something inside me snapped. I felt a sharp pain shoot through my chest, and the room began to spin. The last words on my lips were in her defense, and then suddenly I was falling away from breath, from earth, from the world I thought I understood. And then came the silence. My ears no longer heard the noise of television debates or political chatter. Instead, I felt myself being lifted upward into a realm I could never have imagined. The air shimmered with a light so pure, so holy, it burned through every lie I had ever believed. My body was gone, but my soul trembled as though it were naked before something far greater. The first thing I saw was a gate, vast and radiant, and before it stood angels like warriors, their eyes burning with fire. They did not look at me with flattery or favor. They looked through me, as if they could read the very thoughts of my heart. Behind them, the heavens opened into a throne room, and I realized I had been carried into the place where truth is no longer debated, it is revealed. As I stood there, shaking, I heard a voice, strong as thunder yet tender as a father. You died defending man. But here, all men bow to me. My knees buckled, and I wept, because I knew this was the voice of Jesus himself. Shall I continue with part 2, where I describe the throne room of heaven opening before her, and how she begins to see who Tulsi Gabbard truly bows to in the light of Christ's judgment? You said, K. ChatGPT said, here's part 2 of 8, for she died defending Tulsi Gabbard but saw who she really bows to. Actually, Repan. Part 2, the throne room unveiled. As the angel stepped aside, I was ushered into the throne room, and nothing on earth had ever prepared me for the sight. It was vast beyond measure, a place where eternity itself seemed to stand still. The very air was alive with glory. A sea of glass stretched out like crystal before a throne, so radiant it burned brighter than the sun at high noon. And on that throne sat Jesus, the King of Kings, the Judge of all nations. His eyes were like fire, searching, consuming, seeing every secret buried in the heart of man. Around him, multitudes gathered, not as a crowd of voters or supporters, but as souls laid bare. No campaigns, no speeches, no slogans, only truth. The angels unrolled scrolls that contained the records of every nation and every leader, the deeds done in secret, the alliances hidden from the people. And as I looked upon those heavenly records, I realized with terror that the debates and files of earth were nothing compared to what heaven already knew. Then, my eyes were drawn to a vision clearer than television, sharper than memory. I saw Tulsi Gabbard standing, her head bowed low. At first I thought she was bowing before Christ, but then the vision pulled back, and I saw the truth. She was bowing before men in power, before hidden hands that demanded loyalty in exchange for influence. Behind her loomed shadows, powers tied to foreign nations, powers that whispered promises of safety, wealth, and prestige. And in that moment I felt my heart break, because I had defended her as though she stood above corruption. But heaven showed me otherwise. My body trembled, and I fell to my knees. I wanted to cry out, to deny what I was seeing, but Jesus' voice thundered across the chamber. Every knee bows. The question is, to whom? His words pierced me deeper than any sword, for I realized then that my passion, my loyalty, my defense of a politician had blinded me to a greater truth. No leader on earth is above the judgment of Christ. As I knelt trembling on that glass-like floor, I felt the weight of my own blindness. On earth, I had poured my energy into defending Tulsi, as though she were a savior in flesh and blood. I told myself she was different, that she would stand against corruption where others had failed. But there, in the throne room, Jesus laid bare the truth I had refused to see. The vision widened, and I saw not just Tulsi, but a procession of leaders from every nation, men and women draped in power, speaking eloquent words, promising hope and justice. Yet when the veil of heaven was pulled back, their lips spoke one thing to the people, while their knees bent to another master. Some bowed to wealth, some to military might, some to secret alliances forged in darkness. And I heard Jesus speak with a voice that shook the very pillars of the heavens. They bow for power, but my throne alone is eternal. I wept bitterly. My heart felt like it was being split in two, because I realized I had treated politics like a battlefield for salvation. I had allowed my faith to mingle with loyalty to mere mortals, forgetting that no politician, no matter how appealing, could deliver what only Christ himself has promised. The decades of my life growing up in small-town America, singing patriotic hymns in church, pledging allegiance to the flag, I suddenly saw how easily we confuse earthly symbols with eternal truth. The flag is good, yes, but it is not the cross. Leaders can speak truth, but they are not truth itself. Jesus looked at me with eyes that burned away every excuse. He said, "Do not confuse loyalty to a man with loyalty to me. You defended her name, but did you defend mine?" The words crushed me, because I realized how often I had raised my voice in defense of politicians, yet how quiet I had grown in speaking boldly the name of Christ in my own family, in my community, in my nation that is slipping away. It was in that moment that I saw my defense of Tulsi for what it truly was, not a noble act, but a misplaced devotion. And Jesus showed me that America itself is drowning in this same trap, lifting up leaders like idols, while forgetting the only king who will never betray them. As I remained on my knees in that throne room, the vision spread out before me, and I saw America not as we see it in headlines or rallies, but as heaven sees it. I saw small-town churches where the pews used to be full, now nearly empty. I saw Bibles collecting dust on shelves, while screens glowed late into the night. I saw families divided not by war or famine, but by politics, shouting at one another over leaders who promised change but never delivered salvation. My heart ached because it was the America I had grown up in, yet it was slipping away before my eyes. And then Jesus spoke again, his words slicing through the vision like lightning. Many loved their nation more than they loved me. Many defended men's names but denied mine. The truth of it hit me like a hammer. We, the generation that once sang "Onward Christian Soldiers" and bowed our heads in prayer before football games, had slowly traded the cross for political banners. We fought for parties and candidates with more passion than we prayed for our own children's souls. The vision deepened, and I saw leaders on every side, red, blue, left, right, each one bowing in secret chambers to powers unseen. They made deals with foreign hands, bowed to money, bowed to influence, bowed to pride. And over it all I heard Jesus declare, "No man can serve two masters." Tears streamed down my face because I saw my own reflection in that indictment. I thought I was standing for truth when I defended Tulsi with such fire, but really, I was clinging to an idol. And America itself, a nation once dedicated to God, has been seduced into idolizing politicians while forgetting the Lord of Lords. I thought of my childhood, of hearing my grandmother's voice singing Amazing Grace as she worked, of my father bowing his head over dinner, of neighbors who once trusted one another and spoke of Jesus without shame. Now those memories feel like relics of a fading America. The courtroom of heaven made it clear. If this nation does not return to Christ, no politician, no matter how charismatic or strong, will save it. And then Jesus looked directly at me, his voice trembling with both sorrow and authority. "You defended her, but she bows to another. Who do you bow to?" The vision grew sharper, and I could no longer hide from what heaven was revealing. I saw Tulsi again, the one I had defended with passion. But her image shifted. What had seemed noble and courageous on earth was unmasked in the light of heaven. She bowed, not before Christ, but before foreign powers whose hands were stained with blood. I saw whispers from Israel, influences from nations that pull strings behind the curtain, and I realized that the bold words she spoke in public were weighed down by compromises made in secret. And she was not alone. I saw others leaders I had once trusted, presidents and senators, governors and generals, each of them stepping forward, their public faces shining with smiles, but their knees bent to money, influence, and hidden masters. It was as if the courtroom of Christ stripped them of their speeches and reputations, leaving nothing but the truth of who they really served. My stomach twisted, and I wept bitterly, because I realized that I, too, had been deceived. I had fought with fiery words for someone who seemed different, someone I thought was standing against corruption, when in reality, she was kneeling like the rest. The courtroom of heaven does not deal in illusions. It exposes the heart. Jesus' voice thundered across the chamber. They bow for power. They bow for favor. They bow for survival. But my throne is the only one that endures. His words echoed like a gavel striking for eternity. In that moment, I understood something that cut me to the core. No leader, no matter how promising, can be trusted fully unless they bow first and only to Christ. And too many, far too many, bow to men before they ever bow to Him. The angels stood as witnesses, their faces solemn, as though they had seen this tragedy countless times before. Names that shook nations on earth were nothing in that courtroom. Their titles, their campaigns, their speeches, ashes, compared to the eternal weight of whom they had truly served. I wanted to cry out, to defend Tulsi still, to say, "She tried," but my lips were sealed by the presence of Christ, and His eyes burned through me. He spoke again, quieter this time, but with such piercing clarity that my very soul quaked. "Do not defend what I have already unmasked." As the courtroom shifted, I expected the spotlight to remain on the leaders I had defended and despised in equal measure. But suddenly, the light turned toward me. My chest tightened as I realized this was not only about them, this was about me. The same scrolls that revealed their hidden compromises now opened to expose mine. I saw my own life unrolled like a film. I saw the hours I had spent arguing politics more passionately than I ever prayed. I saw how quickly I would rise to defend Tulsi's name, yet how often I stayed silent when Christ's name was mocked in public. I saw myself scrolling through headlines, devouring every piece of news about corruption and power, but neglecting the one book, the Bible, that had been with me since childhood. It was unbearable. Every memory burned into me, sharper than any knife. I thought about my youth in small-town America, when I stood in pews singing "Just As I Am" at altar calls, tears running down my face, promising God my whole life. Somewhere along the way, I traded that pure devotion for political fire, thinking it was the same thing. But here, in this courtroom, I saw it clearly. It was idolatry dressed as patriotism. And then His voice came, not in thunder, but like a piercing whisper that cut through the marrow of my soul. "You defended man, but did you defend me? You raised your voice for her, but how often did you raise it for the gospel?" I collapsed on my knees, sobbing uncontrollably. I wanted to cry out excuses that I thought I was standing for truth, that I only wanted justice, but the words turned to ash in my mouth. Before the King of Heaven, no excuse can stand. My pride, my politics, my misplaced devotion were all laid bare. Yet in that crushing weight, I felt something unexpected: mercy. The fire of His eyes did not only expose me, it also invited me. I felt His presence lean close, and I heard Him say, "I discipline those I love. You are not cast out, but you must change." Tears poured down my face. I realized in that moment that Christ wasn't condemning me to destroy me. He was exposing me to save me. Still, the shame of knowing I had given so much of my heart to men instead of to Him left me trembling, undone. As I lay broken in that courtroom, Jesus lifted His hand, and the vision spread wider than I could bear. I saw America, our beloved land of small towns, country churches, farm fields, and folded flags standing at a crossroads. I saw men and women of my own generation, boomers who had given their youth to service, to family, to hard work, now dividing bitterly over politics. I saw living rooms where the Bible once sat open, now replaced by glowing screens pouring out fear and anger. And I felt His grief. Then His voice thundered, shaking the very foundations of eternity. You are a nation that shouts for leaders but whispers my name. You are a people that fight for parties, but will you fight for me? The words struck me like lightning. They weren't just for me, they were for all of us. He showed me elders, men who had marched off to Vietnam, women who had prayed faithfully for their families, now pouring more zeal into defending politicians than defending their grandchildren's faith. He showed me churches that once rang with hymns like "The Old Rugged Cross," now more concerned with debates than with the salvation of souls. And He said, "This is the decline of your nation. Not bombs, not borders, but the loss of your first love." I wept bitterly. I wanted to cry out to every American elder, every patriot who still loves the flag and remembers the Pledge of Allegiance in schoolrooms. Don't let your loyalty to man replace your loyalty to Christ. For in that courtroom, it was clear the kingdoms of this world rise and fall, but His kingdom alone will remain. Jesus leaned forward, His eyes blazing with truth and sorrow, and He spoke directly to me. Tell them if they bow to men, they will fall with men. But if they bow to me, they will stand forever. The warning rang in my bones. It was not just for me, not just for Tulsi, but for America itself. The courtroom of heaven had passed its judgment. Misplaced loyalty leads to destruction. Only Christ can save. The light of that courtroom burned brighter and brighter until I felt as though I could not stand it any longer. My body shook. My soul was undone, and I cried out for mercy. Then, in the midst of my trembling, Jesus' voice came again, calm but firm, like a father to a child. I am giving you back time, not for politics, not for pride, for testimony. In an instant, the vision faded, the throne room slipped away, and I felt myself pulled downward, back into the weight of my body. Air filled my lungs like fire, and I gasped awake with tears still wet on my face. The room around me was the same, but I was not the same. The papers I had once clutched in heated defense arguments, names, scandals now felt like ash in my hands, because I had seen the higher courtroom, and there is no comparison. Since that moment, my soul has been different. My pride was shattered, my politics stripped bare. I cannot defend men the way I once did, for I know now that no matter how righteous they may seem, they too must stand before Christ. My heart trembles when I think of the judgment coming, not only for leaders, but for our nation that has forgotten its first love. And I cannot stay silent. Not to you, my brothers and sisters, my fellow boomers, my fellow Americans. I saw Jesus. I heard Him speak, and His words still echo in me. Every knee bows. The question is, to whom? End quote. My friends, hear me. The courtroom of heaven is real. The files we debate on earth, the scandals, the corruption, the secrets, they are nothing compared to the scrolls already unsealed in eternity. Our nation's hope will not come from a politician. It will not come from Tulsi, or Trump, or Biden, or any man or woman who seeks power. Our only hope is to bow before Jesus Christ while there is still time. I stand before you changed. Once, I defended Tulsi Gabbard as though she were the answer. Now I testify of the only one who is the answer. He showed me who she really bows to. And he warned me, and all of us, that misplaced loyalty is idolatry. America must bow again, not to men, but to the King of Kings. That is the message I brought back from the other side. That is the truth I cannot escape. Jesus Christ is Lord, and one day soon, every courtroom, every leader, every nation will know it.